you said that a lot of the price for gold increasing had to do with retail investors and public demand. Um, to what degree do you think that has an effect on the price versus obviously these futures markets and central banks buying and selling gold? I think a lot of the increase in price was due to individual interest.
I think the retail demand had very little to do with the price rise. I think it had all to do with the reclassification of it as a tier one asset. Since 1944, there's only been one tier one asset in the world, a combination of US dollars and US treasuries. That's what happened when Bretton Woods was enacted after World War II. Since then, gold has been a tier three asset, meaning only 50% of its value was calculated on the balance sheets. Therefore, central banks didn't want to hold it for four reasons. Number one, it was unpredictable in its movement. Number two, it paid no interest. Number three, that tier three status would only enable them to calculate 50% on the balance sheet. And well, let's just say those are the three big reasons anyway. And that denigration on the balance sheet, would inhibit their ability to sell bonds and do international business. So banks across the globe really had no interest in accumulating gold until it was reclassified as a tier one asset. Now it's on par with US dollars and US treasuries. It's considered a riskless investment. In other words, you have the most sophisticated, well-funded, well-informed traders on the globe amassing massive quantities of gold. I think that has created, along with what's happened here with COVID, with the 40% drop in the Dow in March, with the lockdown and the economies grinding to a halt, people have awoken to the fact that precious metals are should be an integral part of any portfolio, and it is pushing the price up. I think the investment demand will certainly put an exclamation point on things, but I think the real impetus for rising prices is the most sophisticated players on the planet have decided it needs to be part of the portfolio, at least on a central bank basis.
Mm. So how did that work? So there's a committee in Basel, and they made the central bank policies, and how did the public pressure affect their decision to reclassify gold as a from tier three to tier one?
I don't think there was any public pressure at all. In fact, I think most of the public could care less about gold, and for a very long time wouldn't know a gold coin if it fell on their foot. I think what it is the realization that the dollar is screwed. A trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. We have amassed $140 trillion by the government's own admission. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, government, military, pensions, all those things are off balance sheet. All of the entitlements and all of the on balance sheet and unfunded or off balance sheet obligations are putting us literally at $140 trillion in the hole. And all of that debt accumulated at the lowest interest rates in human history. So I think the realization that there has to be a second alternative, that the dollar's days are waning. In fact, I did a speech last July in Vancouver, and I showed a chart that was sent out by JP Morgan Private Wealth. And JP Morgan Private Wealth is the division of their bank that works with the centimillionaires and the billionaires, the wealthiest and most influential investors on the planet. The article or the letter that was sent to all of their depositors said something to the extent that we believe the dollar will be challenged for its singular world reserve status in the near future. We think you should mitigate your exposure to the dollar through other foreign currencies and through precious metals. So the bottom line is I think there is a lifespan on currency. In fact, Dr. Franz Pick said all paper currencies inherently are meant to die. They inherently all retrace to their intrinsic value, which is zero. And so the bottom line is that the dollar is getting close to its lifespan and arguably maybe has already exceeded it when you take a look at the fact that it's insolvent. When you take a look at the prospects for the dollar, think of it this way. We have interest rates on the 10-year Treasury at 0.6%, and those treasuries are issued by an insolvent government that are running massive amounts of inflation. Since September of last year, central bank has accumulated or produced rather $7 trillion out of thin air. Now, it took this country over 300 years to create 800 billion in wealth, and they just with keystroke create 7 trillion, 3.5 since February, 1.5 trillion since May. And ask yourself this question when you talk about the prospects of the dollar: who in their right mind would buy a 10-year treasury earning 0.6% when inflation is running much higher than that, issued by an insolvent government with a coupon literally of next to nothing? Nobody but the Fed. So the Fed has two choices. They can continue to monetize, which creates massive levels of inflation, which ultimately leads to higher interest rates and a depression, or they back away from the bond market and because no one else is buying it, and it collapses, interest rates explode, the greatest depression of all time. All roads lead to the same place: trouble for the dollar. And I think that the central banks realize that. They front ran this decision by over a year and a half. If you look at 2018, the central banks as a group bought more gold in 2018 than they did as a community, as a group, for the previous 60 years combined. You took all of the central bank gold acquisitions for the 60 years before 2018, it didn't amount to what they bought in 18. Before the decision was made, now they knew what was coming. In 2019, that number increased by 90%. So you have the most sophisticated, in the know, well-funded investors front-running this massive decision. Now ask yourself this question: central bankers don't make massive decisions like that in a vacuum. They don't do it just for shits and giggles. So the bottom line is that for 80 years nearly, the only tier one asset accepted by central banks were dollars and treasuries. Now, out of nowhere, they say, well, let's make gold a tier one asset. They front run the decision by over a year and a half, continue to massively accumulate it, because I think the handwriting is on the wall. And that is that they plan on doing something with gold. Perhaps, if I had to guess, you'll see a new digital backed currency backed by gold to some degree. Probably not convertible, but if I had to guess, 10, 20, 30% will be the underpinning of a new digital dollar, because I think the days of the dollar are numbered, and the willingness for people to accept it as a medium of exchange or as a world reserve, I think, are coming to an end. And I think all of these decisions that they are making are for a purpose. Again, they don't make decisions like that out of the clear blue for no reason. So I think that really is maybe the most relevant, game-changing, important decision of my 30-year career. The second most being JP Morgan going long in the futures market after accumulating 1 billion ounces of silver, 10 times what the Hunt brothers wanted to accumulate in 1980, and over 25 million ounces of gold. At the same time, they go long after 12 years of being short. They are under indictment, under 6 federal racketeering charges for their precious metals desk, being accused of being a criminal enterprise in an ongoing investigation into manipulation of the precious metals market. Things are starting to unravel. And if I had to guess, gold will be a center stage investment world over here very, very soon. People will wake up to the fact that stocks and bonds are not and mutual funds are not always the only pavement to the road to retirement. So I think things are changing very much. And the tier one revaluation by the Bank of International Settlements, the central bank, puts an exclamation point on that. I think it is something that everyone should really stand up and take note of. If I had to guess, very soon gold will be higher than most people think possible as a result.
Yeah, wow, a lot of good points there. Yeah.